release tonight. PhilHealth funds are running dry. The state health insurer revealed in a Senate probe that their actuarial life can only last them a year. After admitting that he was inutile in handling the territorial dispute in the West Philippine Sea, the president now bars the country from taking part in joint maritime exercises in contested waters. COVID-19 cases in the country hit a new grim milestone with more than 6,000 fresh cases. That's the biggest single-day rise in infections to date. Experts say a mutation in the virus might be the culprit. Commuters get a bit of a reprieve. The Joint Task Force COVID Shield has once again allowed motorcycle backriding with some conditions. Barangays also rushed to distribute quarantine passes. And just like a scene straight out of Jumanji, an ostrich was spotted running loose inside a subdivision in Quezon City. But even the bird was not spared from quarantine protocols.
Wala kang ID, hindi ka pwede lumabas.
Hindi ka pwede, wala kang gate pass.
Let's begin with a whistleblower alleging that a mafia exists within PhilHealth. But apart from the corruption allegations, senators were also puzzled as to why the state health insurer is in a deficit and supposedly nearing collapse. Mian Los Baños explains.
Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon was dumbfounded upon learning in today's Senate hearing that PhilHealth will be running without reserve funds next year, and that the agency may collapse by 2022. PhilHealth Senior Vice President Nerissa Santiago projects that net operation loss will be at 90 billion pesos this year and might balloon to 147 billion pesos next year due to the pandemic.
Unless additional subsidies are given in the national budget, the PhilHealth system will in fact collapse. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Senators grilled PhilHealth's top officials due to alleged corruption and misuse of funds, including claims by former PhilHealth anti-fraud legal officer Attorney Thorson Keith that around 15 billion pesos were stolen by the members of the executive committee using different schemes.
There is a mafia and syndicate in PhilHealth, sir.
Sino-sino yung mga mafia na yan?
Sir, sa paniniwala ko po, sir, yung Execom po. Executive Committee, sir.
Execom.
Lahat po sila, sir. Lahat ng Execom.
Keith said there was one time that Morales asked him to talk to Greco Belgica of the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission to fix the issue on overpriced test kits, which he said he did not obey. Senator Ping Lacson zeroed in on the millions of pesos released to hospitals even though the interim reimbursement mechanism was designed particularly to address the needs of COVID patients.
Yung Quezon City, 2nd District pareho. Nakasingil siya na ng isang 8.9 at saka isang 5.3 million. Parehong-parehong date yung MOA, parehong-parehong date yung release. Hindi ba sindikato yan?
Magaling po yung original Vice President sa NCR.
Magaling kayo mag-release ng pondo sa gusto nyo releasean.
Lacson presented several documents showing that PhilHealth released as much as 45 million pesos to a dialysis clinic and 226 million pesos to maternity care providers, both of which does not treat COVID patients.
They appealed to us that the patients needed to be taken care of. Then we have about 50,000 dialysis patients.
No, we're not dealing with dialysis. We're talking COVID-19.
Opo. But they said that these are people with comorbidities.
Anak ng baka.
Second in the alleged corruption scheme pertains to PhilHealth's overpriced 2.1 billion peso IT project, which is endorsed by Morales.
I tried my best to find solution to the concerns internally by bringing it up with the board and with management. But the most frustrating part is that management seems to be tolerating these fraudulent acts by their inaction against these executive officers of PhilHealth who are obviously compromised.
Morales said the program will help the agency clear its database and create a robust information plan. But board members said there was no clear plan as to how the fund will be used. Instead, the board members were asked to approve the release of a supplemental budget for the IT program amounting to more than 300 billion pesos.
So, si Dr. Mercado, nakapag-comment na parang naman yatang pinablockmail na itong board. President Morales, would you acknowledge na meron kang duda na pwede may irregularity talaga dito sa budget proposal?
No, sir. I don't think
Yung sa 2.1 billion?
I think it was a matter of explaining fully to the members of the board the details of the IT system.
Morales admitted, however, that their estimated fraud index in PhilHealth is at 7.5%. Senators also questioned Morales for failing to implement President Duterte's order last year to sack the agency's senior vice presidents and board members. He even promoted 3 senior officials who were found to have active cases in the Ombudsman. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
With the threat of collapse in PhilHealth, Malacanang says government is ready to inject funds into the ailing agency. Palace spokesman Harry Roque said the state will step in once PhilHealth's reserve funds empty out. Roque, who authored the Universal Healthcare Law when he was still a congressman, said the survival of the agency does not rely solely on its collections.
Kung maubos po ang pera ng PhilHealth, gobyerno po ang magbibigay ng pondo.
In an effort to supposedly reduce tension in the West Philippine Sea, President Duterte has barred the Philippines from participating in joint maritime exercises in the contested waters. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana made the announcement saying the country should not be involved in naval drills except in national waters or within 12 miles from Philippine shores.
I hope that all the parties in this exercise will work on their actions there to exercise prudence and carefulness so that there will be no miscalculations that could further increase the tension.
In his recent State of the Nation address, President Duterte admitted he was inutil and powerless when it came to China's pursuit of the contested territory. But for Lorenzana, the president is far from being a defeatist.
He's just being pragmatic and realistic. You know, there are so many countries who are getting involved here in South China Sea, but they have different interests than the Philippines.
As Metro Manila and nearby provinces revert to modified ECQ, the PNP says it will observe maximum tolerance and that a shoot-to-kill order will not be an option. Romel Lopez tells us what their approach will be.
Police Chief General Archie Gamboa admits that like some medical frontliners, even their counterparts in the PNP have actually reached the breaking point. As cases of COVID-19 among the police force continue to rise, over 2,200 police personnel have tested positive for COVID-19. Though more than 1,000 have already recovered, 11 were killed by the virus. Gamboa adds, bulk of these cases are from Metro Manila with at least 900 infections. But the country's top cop assures the public there's no room for them to call for a timeout.
Hindi pwede mag-timeout ang PNP. No? We cannot, we're not authorized to call for a timeout in the PNP. We have to continue, no? If we have to, marami naman ang Philippine National Police. We are totaling already 209,000, no?
Gamboa also emphasized that quarantine violators in Metro Manila, Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, and Bulacan will be given 2 to 3 days to readjust to the abrupt shift to modified enhanced community quarantine.
So magsimula din muna tayo sa warning, no? Bibigyan natin ang publiko ng strict warning, no, on the first initial days of violations. So maximum tolerance, and then sana naman the public will cooperate, no? Sana naman the public will cooperate para hindi na mapilitan ang PNP na mag-impose ng regulation.
Meanwhile, Gamboa reiterates that his men will not go through the extent of harming quarantine violators. This after a local official in Quezon City posted on social media a supposed shoot-to-kill threat against those who will not abide by lockdown protocols.
Shoot-to-kill?
Yes, sir. Shoot-to-kill na daw.
Baka lang to emphasize things, no?
Even the Interior Department considers improper and illegal the alleged shoot-to-kill threat by Rani Lodovica, the head of the QC Task Force Disciplina. They even advise him to refrain from issuing similar statements in the future. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte already disowned the said post of her appointee, saying it does not reflect the policy of their local government. For News 5, Romel Lopez, we are One News.
Let's pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, by far the biggest single-day jump in COVID-19 infections, the country logs more than 6,000 cases today. Health experts have reason to believe that a more potent variant of the virus could be behind the spike in cases. And it is day one of the modified enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila and surrounding provinces. A look at how it went after the break. I'm Robbie Alampay, you're watching The Big Story. COVID-19 infections in the country hit a new record, 6,000 cases in a single day. This brings the total number of cases in the country to more than 112,000. 44,000 are active. 11 patients recently lost their battle to the disease, pushing the death toll to more than 2,100. Meanwhile, 240 patients have recovered from the disease. We now have 66,000 COVID-19 survivors. President Duterte was bold and unapologetic in blaming the public and their lack of discipline for the spike in new cases, but science experts abroad say the rise in infections globally may have something to do with a mutation in the virus. Maan Enriquez explains.
Several experts attributed the rise in COVID-19 cases to a so-called lenient general community quarantine imposed back in June. But aside from this, some experts are looking at SARS-CoV-2's mutation, which they say might have pushed infections in the country. Based on a study of experts from the United States and the United Kingdom, it was in February when the area with most COVID-19 cases shifted from China to Europe. This is where they discovered a new variant of SARS-CoV-2 with spike G614, or what they call G variant. This G variant replaced the D variant, which originated in Wuhan, China, as the dominant pandemic form. Infected individuals with the G variant were observed to have higher upper respiratory tract viral loads. Molecular epidemiologist Edsel Salvana said this may be the reason why almost 95% of persons with COVID-19 cases in the world were infected with G variant from June to July.
Nila yung mga tao na may G variant at mas mataas talaga yung level ng virus, yung dami ng virus sa kanilang ilong. Kaya ang sinabi nila, mukhang most likely talaga mas nakakahawa itong G variant.
So far, there is no significant evidence yet that infection with SARS-CoV-2 containing the G variant is deadlier or will lead to a more severe disease. Dr. Salvana added that it is unlikely the G variant would have an impact on the vaccines that are currently being developed. The Department of Science and Technology said that as soon as a vaccine is approved under the COVAX facility, 3% of the population, or about 3 million vaccines, will be ready for use. The IATF has initially approved a 1.5 billion peso budget for this.
Ang sisiguruhin lang na shoulder ng gobyerno ay yung para sa people below the poverty level. Oo. All the rest, hindi pa natin alam kung paano ang sistema, kung may subsidy ba ang gobyerno o kung kanya-kanyang pili na lang.
For now, experts remind the public to be more cautious and follow the minimum health protocols, such as wearing a face mask, even face shields, practicing physical distancing, and washing of hands. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
The first day of MECQ in Metro Manila proved to be a challenge for workers as public transportation was temporarily suspended. Greg Gregorio gives us a look at how commuters struggled.
With public transportation at a standstill as Metro Manila returns to modified enhanced community quarantine or MECQ, workers again are troubled as to how to get to work.
Mahirap kasi lakad ulit. Pag-adjust na oras ng pag-alis. 2 hours yung pila sa Pasig. Kasi ito lalakadin na naman papuntang SNR show.
To somehow ease the burden, Joint Task Force COVID Shield Commander Guillermo Eliasar told Radyo 5 that authorities agreed to allow motorcycle backriding, but with certain conditions.
Dapat apor yung nasa likuran, work-related ang travel niya. Ibig sabihin, galing sa bahay papunta sa papasukan at pabalik. And then, hindi kailangan na related sila sa isa't isa. Yun po yung isang kondisyon. Ang pangalawa, yung susundin para natin, yung dapat merong prescribed barrier.
Motorcycles must also be private-owned to prevent habal-habal or motorcycles for hire. The PNP Highway Patrol Group is also implementing checkpoints once again, causing a traffic buildup along EDSA. Authorities made sure that private vehicles only carry 50% of their capacity. Motorists were asked for some documents to prove that they are on the road for essential purposes, like a company ID, something that Angelo failed to show.
Wala ko. Ano lang meron? Ito lang po sa akin. Rapid test lang, tsaka U-pass lang po.
The Highway Patrol officials is urging compliance.
Pag nagtatrabaho kayo, provided naman po ng ating business establishment yung shuttle na ginagamit natin.
Taxi and UV Express drivers were also flagged down for not following the suspension of public transportation under MECQ areas.
Hindi naman ako namamasaya, boss. Saan po papunta dapat? Baklaran. Baklaran. May kukunin lang kasi nagka-emergency sila.
May nakalagay ko hapon kasi sa dyaryo, nabasa ko po na personal mo po pwede mong gamitin.
The Transportation Department said public transportation units such as taxis and UV Expresses may only operate if a private company contracted them for their service. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Shoppers also had to endure long lines in grocery stores and wet markets in preparation for the 2-week MECQ. While there were no reports of hoarding, supermarket owners still expect supply gaps, especially for alcohol, disinfectant sprays, canned goods, and other daily necessities. The Trade Department is once again considering placing a cap on purchases per item. Agriculture Secretary William Dar assures sufficient food supply. He is appealing to LGUs, however, to help facilitate the unhampered flow of goods to areas under MECQ.
Sana wala na naman mga problema dyan sa mga checkpoints. Sana nandyan palagi naman ang ating mga regional field offices na tumutulong kung may problema na ganyan.
Meanwhile, lawmakers are pushing for more funding for the proposed Bayanihan 2 law. Marikina Representative Stella Kimbo says the country will lose at least 12 billion pesos daily as Metro Manila and nearby provinces revert to modified ECQ. Last week, the Senate had approved its 140 billion peso version of the bill. House Minority Leader Benny Abante wants the measure to undergo another round of interpellations in the lower house. And coming up on the big story, Travel may already be restricted in Metro Manila, but that did not stop two ostriches from roaming the streets. A look at their crazy escape when we come back. This is the big story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Following an order from the Interior Department, barangays under modified ECQ have begun handing out new quarantine passes. A look at how the distribution went in some parts of the metro in this report by Laila Pangilinan.
Aside from face shields and face masks, quarantine passes are again required for areas under MECQ. In barangay veterans in Quezon City, residents are quite pleased with the fast distribution of their new quarantine passes.
Kasi medyo mahirap kumuha ng quarantine pass ngayon. Sobrang dali na. Wala pang 5 minutes, approve na ako agad.
While old quarantine passes are still allowed, barangay veterans residents can request for a new one if they already lost theirs. But Lolo Ronaldo was not as lucky. He was not granted a pass due to his age.
Mamimili akong prutas.
Kaya na, ba't na po kayo hindi binigyan?
Ano raw kayo? Overage to.
Bacoor City and Cavite has more leeway in giving passes to senior citizens, but only if all household members are in their old age. The city quarantine passes are also color coordinated. Red for regular ones, orange for senior citizens, yellow for medical personnel, and green for essential workers. Over in Valenzuela, Barangay Karuhatan's officials personally deliver the passes to the homes of residents.
Number one sa physical distancing. So ito para ma-sure namin na doon sa bahay mismo, yung pamilya talagang nakatira doon, yun yung bibigyan namin ng quarantine pass.
Something that residents appreciate.
Parang feeling namin na binigyan kami ng importance, so hindi kami na kailangan pumunta pa sa barangay personally para lang makakuha ng quarantine pass.
This is the first time that Valenzuela City will issue quarantine passes to residents.
Hindi namin ina-anticipate na ito lang for 15 days lang. Kung sakali man na tumagal, at least medyo may yung quarantine pass nila matibay-tibay. Ina-expect namin na sana sumunod na talaga sila dun sa kasi yung biglang shoot up nung yung mga positive cases.
The Interior Department earlier ordered barangays to issue new quarantine passes and that barangay officials should facilitate its distribution. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan. We are One News.
The Philippine College of Physicians has clarified that there was never a call for a revolt, even as they urged government to impose a stricter lockdown. Marlene Alcaide with the story.
In a webinar Tuesday morning, medical frontliners thanked President Duterte for once again implementing modified enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila and nearby provinces. The overwhelming surge of COVID-19 patients the past weeks prompted health workers to call for a timeout. However, the frontliners clarified they are not calling for a revolt.
Sad when I heard about it, and definitely we would want to emphasize that we want to help. We are not inclined to hurt anybody.
Representatives of the healthcare workers met with the Health Department and the IATF on Monday. They tackled areas that need to be enhanced in the country's COVID-19 response, including contact tracing. They also reiterated the request for additional manpower.
Marami po sa amin ang nagkasakit na at saka sa ngayon ay temporarily naka-quarantine.
They also stressed the need for the public solidarity and cooperation. The doctors remind the public to wear masks properly, maintain social distancing, and practice proper hygiene.
Tandaan natin, 80% ng may COVID, very mild ang sakit.
konting ubo, konting sipon, okay pa siya. So kung meron kang konting ubo, konting sipon o lagnat, no, parang trangkasong very mild, sinat, ano na, suspect ka na, magpa-test ka na, at lahat ng contact mo kailangan sundan na.
They also raised the issue on the use of rapid tests to detect COVID-19 patients.
Ang paggamit ng rapid test sa workplace naging problema at nakadagdag sa paglaganap ng COVID-19. Pangalawa, yung PCR. Gawin kaya natin yung PCR. Mahirap din yun. Kasi kung gumawa ako ng PCR ngayon at negative, pinapasok ko, okay, safe ako ngayon. Paano yung bukas?
The frontliners admit 2 weeks is not enough to solve problems in the health system, but they can maximize this time to fill the gaps as well as improve and identify other agencies that can contribute more. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
As for President Duterte's offer to give healthcare workers bigger allowances and benefits, that might have to wait. Budget Undersecretary Laura Pascua admits they are still studying where to source funding for the floated 15,000 pesos stipend, insurance coverage, and free accommodation and transportation for healthcare workers. The Games and Amusement Board is assuring athletes that they are taking extra steps to make practice sessions safe amid the pandemic. This is to make sure that fans will soon see some sports back in action. In an online forum, Gov't Chairman Baham Mitra said the recently imposed MECQ will give them more time to polish their safety protocols and guidelines in practice sessions based on a joint administrative order of the DOH, GAB, and the Philippine Sports Commission. Only boxing, football, and basketball players are allowed to conduct practice sessions amid the pandemic. And just when you thought 2020 could not get any crazier, a video of an ostrich running free in a village in Quezon City has gone viral. Residents in Mapayapa Village 3 started their morning with quite a sight, an ostrich on the run, running down their street. The bird appeared to be chasing a car inside the village. Some were quick to capitalize on this rather extraordinary encounter. Motorcycle taxi app Angkas, for one, offered the promo code OSTRICH for its delivery service. The ostrich was eventually caught by village officials and was returned to its owner. One other ostrich of that owner also escaped earlier today, but has also been returned. The crazy ostrich run could have been a success if it was not for the village security guard who was quick to act.
Wala kang ID, hindi ka pwede lumabas.
Hindi ka pwede, wala kang gate pass.
And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.